Hey guys, Movie Wiz here. In today's video, I will be telling you the story of the horror film, The Boy. Spoilers ahead. Enjoy the video. The Boy surrounds Greta, an American nanny who travels to the United Kingdom to babysit an elderly couple's 8-year-old son. Upon her arrival, she is surprised to discover that her employers present her with a doll instead of a human son. She is given strict instructions on how to care for the doll, but when she ignores some of these instructions, many strange and terrifying events occur, leading her to think that the doll is alive. The film begins with a car transporting a young woman who sleeps in the backseat. Arriving at their destination, a man unlocks the gate as the car drives through, arriving at a large old house that resembles a castle. The driver wakes the young woman, telling her that her employers, the Heelshires, require her to wait in the parlor. The woman steps into the house, resting her bag in a chair and taking off her shoes. She calls out, but no one responds as she walks up the stairs, seeing a large picture of the Heelshires and their son on the wall. She ventures further, discovering a child's bedroom. She takes up a toy but quickly drops it as she is startled by a young man's appearance in the doorway. The man introduces himself as Malcolm, stating that he provides groceries for the family as he discovers that the woman's name is Greta Evans. With a smile on his face, Malcolm figures out that she must be here for the nanny position. She shakes his hand as Malcolm invites her to help him unpack some groceries in the kitchen. Malcolm assumes that Greta is from America, stating that he is good at reading things such as people's palms. He jokingly says that he can even read people's gum as she hesitantly places a piece of gum she was chewing in his hand. He guesses that Greta is a writer who has come to England looking for a break from her life in the United States. Smiling, she tells Malcolm that he is completely wrong, so he decides to take another guess, stating that she is on the run from someone as she looks at him, a tense expression appearing on her face. Greta takes the gum from Malcolm and throws it away, asking him to describe the Heelshires. Malcolm informs her that they are nice, generous people but seems hesitant when asked about the couple's son Brahms. Suddenly, Mrs. Heelshire walks into the kitchen, greeting her with a quick smile before asking, "Where are your shoes?" As she walks back into the parlor, Mrs. Heelshire says that Brahms is very excited to meet her. Looking down at the floor, she realizes that her shoes aren't where she left them, as Mrs. Heelshire says that Brahms must have taken them as he is a playful child. In another room, we see Mr. Heelshire with his back turned as he talks to someone in a chair as his wife joins him. Greta is introduced to Mr. Heelshire and finally meets their son Brahms. With a grin on her face, she laughs as they're sitting in the chair is a well-dressed porcelain doll and not a young boy. Receiving looks of disdain from the parents, she realizes this is not a joke, and they are quite serious. Malcolm appears in the room, shaking Brahms' hand, telling him to be well-behaved as he bids Greta goodbye. Although still in shock, Greta shakes the doll's hand and talks to him, saying, "I hope you I can be friends." Mrs. Heelshire then says that she has a lot of information to relay to her before they leave for vacation. Mrs. Heelshire tells her that there have been a lot of applicants for the job, but Brahms has denied them all, as she adds that none of the applicants were as beautiful or young as her. Now in Brahms' room, Mrs. Heelshire gives Greta a strict set of instructions as it relates to taking care of her son. To start, she must wake Brahms at 7 a.m. each morning and dress him. Greta practices this, but disappointed with her efforts, Mrs. Heelshire gives her an example of how to dress her son. Walking into another room, Mrs. Heelshire states that Brahms attends 3 hours of lessons, 5 days a week. Mrs. Heelshire likes to begin these lessons by reading poetry, inquiring if she knows any poetry. As Greta is inexperienced with this topic, Mrs. Heelshire suggests that any of the available books will suffice. However, Mrs. Heelshire says that it is essential that she reads the books in a loud, clear voice. Mrs. Heelshire also tells her that Brahms enjoys music at a loud volume. In the kitchen, after a family dinner, Mrs. Heelshire tells her that they don't throw away any leftovers in this house, as it is a country house, which means that they often have to compete with the outside elements such as the weather, plants, and vermin. To this end, they take certain measures against these elements. Mr. Heelshire walks in with Brahms, giving his son to his wife, as Mrs. Heelshire states that her husband will explain the rest of her duties. He shows her where the food goes, as well as the mouse traps in the garden, stating that Mrs. Heelshire thinks rats will get into the house and Brahms isn't fond of animals. As they continue their walk in the garden, Mr. Heelshire admits to Greta that he is aware of how peculiar their situation with the doll may seem. Looking her straight in the eye, Mr. Heelshire states, "Our son is here. He's very much with us." Greta says that she understands their situation, which Mr. Heelshire is very pleased to hear, as his wife strangely watches them from an upstairs window. As night draws near, the elderly couple says a prayer, tucking Brahms into bed as she watches from the hallway. The parents close the door for a moment of privacy but quickly open it. Mrs. Heelshire says that Brahms has chosen her as she hugs the new nanny. We see that the house is eerily quiet as Greta locks her bedroom door while she talks to her sister on the phone. She tells her sister how creepy and peculiar this situation is, stating that the house is in the middle of nowhere with no cell service, Wi-Fi, and windows that don't open. However, Greta's sister assures her she will only be there for a few months, further telling her that she needs the money and needs to forget the past. Greta's past refers to Cole, her abusive ex-boyfriend who has been constantly calling Greta's sister. In a comforting tone, her sister assures her that she told him nothing about Greta's current location. The next morning, Greta prepares for the day, hearing Mrs. Heelscher scream in the distance. Walking to Brahms' room, she stands by the door, seeing the room in disarray with toys scattered on the floor as Mrs. Heelscher scolds her son. Mrs. Heelscher reminds Brahms that he promised to be a good boy while his parents are away. Mr. Heelscher suddenly appears in the doorway, informing her that they are anxious to start their vacation, giving her a paper which Mrs. Heelscher created with Brahms' rules and schedule written on it. It is imperative that she follows the rules as Brahms is very particular. Mr. Heelscher also states that Malcolm visits the house once a week with groceries and her salary. Mrs. Heelscher walks down the stairs with Brahms kissing him on his cheek as Mr. Heelscher tells her be good to him and he'll be good to you. He continues to say be bad to him, but Mrs. Heelscher interrupts him, confident that she will take great care of their son. Greta reassures the parents, and with one last kiss, Mrs. Heelscher gives Brahms to her, whispering in her ear, "I'm so sorry." The Heelschers leave as Greta is left alone in the house with Brahms, placing him in a chair as the doll's porcelain eyes eerily stare back at her. She quickly throws a blanket over the doll, feeling uncomfortable around it. In her room, Greta unpacks before making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the kitchen. She then reads a magazine, and it's not long before she falls asleep. In the next scene, she wakes up in total darkness and sees that the blanket had fallen from Brahms' face. She takes him to his room, throwing the doll in a rocking chair as Brahms rocks back and forth in the dark. As the rain pours outside, the house seems even creepier at night as she is unable to sleep. Getting up, she takes a lit candle and walks downstairs, looking at the family picture on the wall before a hand reaches out through the painting, grabbing her neck. But surprise, this was all a dream as Greta wakes up shocked and scared, breathing heavily. Upon hearing a noise, she walks to Brahms' room, seeing a tear fall from the doll's face. However, she is relieved to discover that the ceiling above her is leaking and the doll isn't crying. Assuring herself that nothing is wrong, she places Brahms in his bed. The next morning, she tries to unlock the door to the attic and the ceiling, but it is tightly locked. We see her go throughout her day completely bored as she passes the time by playing the piano and looking over the balcony. That night, she leaves a voicemail for her sister, but quickly picks up the phone when it rings again, thinking it's her sister. Greta hears someone breathing on the other end before they hang up, leaving her stunned. The next day, Malcolm arrives with the groceries. She tells him that he could have warned her about the doll before Malcolm gives Greta her salary in an envelope. Upon inquiring about the doll, Malcolm takes her to Brahms' grave, stating that Brahms did not survive a fire that occurred on his 8th birthday. The elderly couple uses the doll as a coping mechanism, as Malcolm says that it has been 20 years since this incident and that the couple has been looking for a nanny for the last year. Changing the subject, Malcolm offers to take her out into town, but she declines. However, being his charming self, Malcolm persuades her and she agrees. As they walk away, it seems as though someone is watching them from an upstairs window. Later that night, she chats with her sister on the phone as she gets ready to go out with Malcolm. Greta's sister jokingly asks if she is going to wear her coral dress, which Greta has in her hands at that very moment. The next scene shows Greta in the bathroom as she places her coral dress on the towel rack before getting into the shower. As she is showering, the door slowly opens as her coral dress is pulled from the towel rack and her necklace is taken from the sink. Exiting the shower, she looks in the mirror, seeing that a small section of her hair has been cut. Puzzled, she also notices that her dress and necklace are missing. She looks around her bedroom, turning on the lights, noticing that more of her clothes are missing. To her surprise, she sees that the stairs to the attic and the ceiling have been unlocked as it openly hangs in the hallway. She calls into the dark hallway, thinking that Malcolm is playing a trick on her. Greta ventures into the dark, creepy attic, but it quickly shuts, leaving her trapped inside. Seeing Malcolm outside, she bangs and shouts on the window to get his attention, but he doesn't hear her and drives away. Trapped in total darkness, Greta thinks she sees a figure in the dark, which startles her as she falls to the ground. The next morning, the sun shines through the windows in the attic as she discovers that the figure she saw was just an old jacket. She finds a photo album, seeing Brahms as a child in addition to the same family picture which hangs on the downstairs wall. The stairs to the attic mysteriously spring open as Greta, armed with a weapon, goes back to her bedroom, seeing her clothes hung up and out of place. Malcolm comes over and checks every inch of the house, ensuring her that no one is here, but she doesn't believe this. Malcolm offers to stay with her, as we see the two of them playing pool downstairs. Greta asks about Brahms, as Malcolm says that they are truths and rumors about Brahms at a young age. Some say he was a charming child, while others say that Brahms was strange. Malcolm tells her a story of seeing Mrs. Heelscher opening presents with the doll on what would have been Brahms' birthday, while Mr. Heelscher was drunk in the pool room. Mr. Heelscher tells Malcolm that the real Brahms was odd. As Malcolm says this, we see the doll sitting in his room as Malcolm's voice is somehow echoed through the house and into the doll's room. That night, she once again talks to her sister about the strange events which have occurred, as the sister informs her that Cole asked for her address. Unfortunately, Greta's sister says that her friend gave Cole Greta's address. However, Greta's sister assures her that everything will be fine. As she brushes her teeth, a shadow can be seen moving past her in the mirror. Hearing a noise in the distance, she investigates seeing papers on the floor in Brahms' room as he lays in bed with his head tilted to the right. She straightens his head, but the doll immediately moves it back to the side. However, once again, this was all a dream as she sits up in bed, terrified. The next morning, she opens her bedroom door, seeing her shoes that disappeared when she first arrived. She walks to Brahms' room and is shocked to find the doll sitting upright in the middle of the bed with the list of rules and his schedule right beside him. Completely petrified, she runs back to her room and locks the door. She tries to use the house phone, but it won't work. Suddenly, the phone rings as a child's voice calls her name. The phone rings again and she picks up as a child's voice says, "Please come out. Come play with me, Greta." She demands to know who this is as the voice continues, "Why won't you follow the rules?" She begins to cry and shout as footsteps are heard outside her door. She hears something slide over the floor as the child's voice says, "I promise I'll be good." She slowly opens the door, seeing a plate with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on the floor as Brahms sits across the hall, in his room on the center of the bed. Aware of the peculiarity of this situation, Greta picks up the plate and can't help but laugh. Going to Brahms' room, she stares at the doll and now, convinced that it is alive, decides to follow the rules. The phone rings and to Greta's relief, Malcolm is on the other end as she tells him about what just occurred before abruptly hanging up the phone. Away on vacation, we see Mrs. Heelscher writing a heartfelt goodbye letter to Brahms before she and her husband fill their pockets with rocks and drown themselves. The next morning, adhering to the rules, she wakes Brahms, plays loud music, and prepares breakfast for the doll. She even reads to him and takes him outside. As night approaches, she follows the final rule and tucks Brahms in bed. The following day, Greta plays the piano with Brahms when Malcolm appears, stating that he stopped by because she wasn't answering her phone. He informs her that he has brought some mail, which he places in a pile with the rest. In the kitchen, Malcolm is pleased that Brahms and her are getting along, using this as an opportunity to once again invite her to go out with him. Although Malcolm tries to persuade her, she declines before Malcolm decides to leave. Staring intently at Brahms, she asks if he can hear her, but the doll doesn't respond. She even entices him with a piece of food, desperate to know if a spirit resides within the doll. She goes to throw away the food and upon her return sees that Brahms has moved. Greta calls Malcolm back over to the house, insisting that Brahms is alive. She tries to convince Malcolm by outlining the doll with chalk to see if it will move and walks out of Brahms' room and goes to her bedroom. Accompanied by Malcolm, she closes the door and knocks twice on the wall. Going back to Brahms' room, they find the doll in the same spot as Malcolm is concerned that she is losing her mind. They decide to try one more time, hearing movement all around them. Entering Brahms' room, they see that Brahms is now in the corner of the room, leaving Malcolm completely shocked. In the next scene, we see Malcolm and Greta walking in the garden as they discuss what exactly they could be dealing with, such as a ghost or a spirit. Greta emphasizes that she is here for a reason, telling Malcolm the devastating story of her relationship with her abusive ex-boyfriend Cole. Sadly, this abusive relationship led to her experiencing a miscarriage, as she says that she can relate to losing a child just as the Heelschers did. She is now more determined than ever to care for the doll. Malcolm assures her that he understands and kisses her in the garden. Later on, Greta tucks Brahms into bed and kisses him before going to her room where Malcolm is waiting for her. She begins unbuttoning his shirt as the two of them kiss. Their kissing is interrupted by the loud sound of the record player as they run downstairs, seeing Brahms sitting in the music room as she comforts the doll. Sipping coffee in the kitchen, Malcolm suggests that Greta stay in town tonight for her safety. Malcolm tries to reason with her about these strange occurrences, but she doesn't budge, insisting that she must stay and take care of Brahms. It's here that Malcolm tells Greta about an incident that occurred in the past where a playmate of Brahms named Emily was found with her skull crushed. Although Brahms was supposed to be questioned by the police when they arrived, the house was already on fire. As we know, Mr. and Mrs. Heelscher survived, but Brahms did not. Malcolm is adamant that the spirit or ghost inside Brahms is not one with good intentions. However, Greta is not convinced, insisting that this story could be a rumor, admitting that she will not abandon Brahms. She places Brahms back to sleep and goes to the attic looking for any clues about Malcolm's story. She discovers pictures of Emily and Brahms as children, which confirms that they were playmates. The next day, Greta is startled by a noise and goes to the pool room and is shocked to see her ex-boyfriend Cole. Cole is surprised to discover that Brahms is a doll as she places Brahms to sit in a chair. We find out that Cole is here to persuade her to come back home. As they have dinner, Cole states that he has a new job and tells her that he already booked flights to take her home. Malcolm arrives at the house looking a bit shaken up by Cole's arrival. As Malcolm and Greta walk out of the room, Malcolm tells her that Cole must leave, but she insists that she has a plan. Malcolm then leaves while she brings Cole a pillow for him to sleep on the couch and picks up Brahms to carry him to bed. Cole apologizes for his behavior, pushing her against the pool table as he tightly holds her. However, she won't accept his apology. Cole won't let Greta end their relationship as he goes to kiss her, but she pulls away from him. In bed with Brahms, she tells the doll that she won't leave him. We then see that Malcolm hasn't left and is parked outside in his car. During the night, Cole is awakened by something dripping on his face. He shouts for Greta as he finds dead rats in his bag with the words, "Get out," written in blood on the wall. Cole asks if she is responsible for this, but Greta states that Brahms wrote the words as Cole threatens to take the doll. Due to this loud commotion, Malcolm rushes inside, telling Cole to leave immediately. Enraged with the doll now in his hand, Cole breaks the doll's head on the table as it explodes to pieces as she screams. The trio then hears rumblings from within the walls as the house begins to shake. Suddenly, a mirror explodes which knocks Cole to the floor. A man emerges from the wall wearing a porcelain mask identical to the doll's face. Malcolm realizes that the man is Brahms all grown up. Brahms attacks and kills Cole by sticking a sharp piece of the broken doll in his throat. Malcolm knocks Brahms to the ground as he rushes her out of the house, but Brahms suddenly reappears. They run upstairs and lock themselves in Greta's bedroom, but Brahms tries to open the door. However, Brahms almost comes through the closet, but Malcolm and Greta quickly sprint to Brahms' room. Finding a small exit, the two of them climb through the walls in the house. Initially lost in the walls, Malcolm and Greta stumble upon Brahms' living space. Greta sees her dress on a homemade doll and realizes that Brahms has been watching her this entire time. She also finds the letter from the Heelshires, revealing that they intended to leave her at the house, allowing Brahms to do whatever he wanted with her. Malcolm quickly informs her that he has found a way out as the two of them continue to crawl through the walls. All of a sudden, Brahms breaks through the wall, knocking the two of them to the floor, but they quickly get to their feet, finding a gate that leads to the outside. Malcolm stays behind to fight Brahms, who beats him unconscious as she finally gets outside, while Brahms shouts, "If you leave, I'll kill him just like the others." Greta runs and is finally free, but makes the brave decision to go back for Malcolm. With a screwdriver in her hand, she enters the house as Brahms emerges from the darkness, Greta telling him that it's bedtime. She tucks him into bed, following all the rules, but Brahms demands a kiss from her, forcefully kissing her through the mask. However, she uses this as an opportunity to stab Brahms with the screwdriver, but he tosses her against the wall as she falls to the floor in pain. Brahms lifts her against the wall, slowly strangling her, but she plunges the screwdriver further into his stomach, causing Brahms to loosen his grip on her and fall to the floor. This allows her to run while Brahms draws his final breath. Greta rescues Malcolm and drives away from the house with a look of relief on her face. In the final scene, we see the empty, large house as Brahms sits in his room in the walls, placing the broken pieces of the doll back together. The movie ends with the doll staring at us, the viewers, as ominous music plays in the background. And there you have it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more movie recaps like this. Good night.